Welcome to another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line. I'm Mark Wilson, President and CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And joining me today is Doug Davidson, the new chair of the Florida Chamber Foundation and Commercial Banking Market Executive with Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Doug, welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
You were recently named to a 2-year term as the chair of the Florida Chamber Foundation. So as you look forward to your term as chair, I'm wondering if you can share with our viewers your expectations, your hopes. Where can we take this over the next few years?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I'm extremely grateful and excited to become the new chair for the board for the Florida Chamber Foundation. I've been involved with the Florida Chamber for several years now, and I've always admired the work that this organization does. As I take this new role for the next 2 years with the foundation, I'm very excited to engage around the state of Florida. Florida is a special place. We grow by more than 1,000 people every single day. We are globally known as a place where people want to live, work, and play. And over the next couple of years, in my capacity with the Florida Chamber Foundation, I want to help prepare our state for economic growth. Whether it's industrial growth and what are the different sectors that are growing within our state, but also how does our state get ready for 1,000 more people that come to Florida and move here every single day.
Yeah, so Doug, we've all been very impressed with you and your leadership skills. You've served on the board of the Florida Chamber. You've chaired our international committee at the Florida Chamber. And you speak often about how we can diversify and grow Florida's economy. We've talked about how by 2030 we're going to have 6 million more people in Florida. We need to create 2 million more private sector jobs. And I know you view your role as the leader of the foundation is to further unite the business community and leaders around how we secure Florida's future. So there's certainly no shortages of issues to deal with at the federal level, but also here in Florida. And I'm wondering, as you think about the looming issues that are confronting Florida in the next several years, are there certain issues, either challenges or opportunities that you see that we really need to take a look at?
I think there are challenges and I think there are opportunities that can be very positive for our state. And I've lived here my entire life and I plan to live here for the rest of my life. I love Florida. So do a lot of other people. 1,000 people come every single day. We're going to have 6 million more people in Florida in the next 15 years. So to your point, what are some of the challenges that we need to focus on, and especially while I'm in this seat for the next 2 years, I think we need to focus on infrastructure. What does that mean for our roads? What does that mean for our bridges? What does that mean for our airports? We need to think about water. We're surrounded by water. We're a peninsula state. But potable water and with all those new people and agriculture and the importance of agriculture to our economy, how do we ensure that we have the appropriate amount of water supply for the industries and the population? Education is important. In my job with Bank of America, I speak to business owners every single day. And a unifying concern that I hear from business owners is finding good people for their companies. And it's at all levels of jobs. Whether it's technical jobs, labor, all the way to executive leadership and the most complex of engineering jobs. They want to find good people. And I think that starts with education. So as we think about where is Florida going in the next 15 years, 20 years, we need to think about how are we preparing Floridians for those jobs that our employers are looking for. So infrastructure, water, education, healthcare, these are big topics. But what I admire is that the Florida Chamber and the Florida Chamber Foundation is not afraid to take on these big topics. We've done studies in the past. You mentioned trade and logistics. We looked at how does Florida take advantage of our geographic position in the world to be a competitive leader. And so there are big topics that we're going to research over the next 2 years with the Florida Chamber Foundation so that we're better prepared for the next 15 years.
Well, that's very impressive, actually. You almost just went through the 6 pillars, right? So the last big research project we did, the Cornerstone Project, we laid out that there were 6 primary areas that Florida needed to focus on, and you just mentioned many of them. Water, education, infrastructure, these are all vital to economic development. So you talked about the next few years, and my last question for you, I want to ask you, one of the most important projects that will happen in all of Florida under your leadership will be our next cornerstone project. It's called Florida 2030, and as you know, it literally is the writing of the state's next strategic plan, the blueprint from now to 2030. So can you just share with our viewers what are your hopes as we literally write our own storyline here about where does Florida need to be by 2030? What are you hoping that the Florida 2030 project brings to Florida's leadership?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I'm very excited, and I'm very optimistic of what the Florida 2030 study is going to do for the state. You mentioned a couple things. You mentioned the 6 pillars. The 6 pillars is a framework of common language the Florida Chamber uses, Florida Chamber Foundation uses, to create a standard language for unifying concepts around the state of Florida. Florida's a big place. The 6 pillars help identify common concerns that every area of the state needs. One thing that we also use at the Florida Chamber is the Florida Scorecard, and it provides metrics about how we're doing about certain topics like education, like employment, like housing around the state. So similar to the 6 pillars, similar to the Florida Scorecard, in where we're creating a standard Florida language, key topics, I see the Florida 2030 study doing something very similar. It will become a unifying document, a unifying discussion around the state. We're already out in the market having these conversations now. The study is already underway. We've literally spoken with thousands of people. We're traveling around the state. We're listening to people around the state about what's important in their communities. Our hope is to gather that information, create a standard unifying language that communities and businesses that work around the state of Florida bring the business community together in a unified way to talk about what's important as our state continues to grow. 6 million more people by 2030. 2 million more jobs are going to be necessary to keep the same level of employment that we're enjoying today in the state of Florida. I see the 2030 study as being a statewide discussion so that we can better prepare to get to those points.
Well, Doug, that's very impressive. We're obviously very excited about your leadership. Florida's already creating 1 in every 10 jobs in America, but I think as you lead us through the Florida 2030 project, we can continue to provide our nation with an example of how you grow the private sector and how you diversify the economy. So on behalf of all of us at the Florida Chamber and the Florida Chamber Foundation, thank you very much for your leadership, and thank you for joining us today. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us for another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line.